Michael Mezzatesta is an economist. He's an economics content creator based in California, and he joins us now. Thank you very much for being with us so early in the morning. Michael, the cost of eggs surged by more than 44% from June to July. 44%. It's almost 50%. While beef and veal prices, for example, jumped nearly 10%. Is there anything that didn't get more expensive?
Well, almost everything has gotten more expensive, and food has been one of the major categories implicated in this rise of inflation. There are a few things that have gotten cheaper, but not many. Toys, for example, books. If you read a lot of books, now is a good time to buy them. They've gotten a little cheaper, but energy, housing, food, like everything that we need and spend money on every month has gotten more expensive. Like you said, 40% for eggs and things like that. And it's the worst we've seen in 40 years.
And gas prices have started to drop, but still, if you're looking at a family's basket, it really depends, of course, if they're in urban areas or if they rely more on taking cars. They're still much higher, of course, than they were last year, but they have started to go down a little bit. We're facing elections, midterm elections in November. What's the Biden administration planning to do other than what we heard a few days ago about, which is the student loan, for example, scheme? Are there any other plans to make sure Americans have more money in their pockets at the end of the month?
Well, the Biden administration is working hard to address this, and I think their narrative in November is going to be that they were dealt a very difficult hand. It's not just an American issue, that inflation is happening globally, but it's a tough one for them to justify another term in office when prices have risen so much. I think what the Biden administration is trying to do is say, look, we couldn't have predicted the war in Ukraine that caused a massive shock to the global economy, and we are accomplishing campaign promises like student loan forgiveness, more clean energy. And they can, when we talk about economics, they can point to a few good things, like unemployment is at a 50-year low. So there are some silver linings, you could say.
Well, that's crazy, thinking of where we were just 2 years ago or so during the pandemic and how high unemployment was, of course. Meanwhile, the stock market is plunging, and it's continuing. It's been a few days now since that speech of the head of the Federal Reserve on Friday, where he said more interest rate increases are expected in the coming months. So investors are not very happy. Money is becoming more expensive. What's next for the American economy towards the end of this year, the fourth quarter of this year?
Well, it looks pretty clearly like we're headed into a recession, which would be 2 quarters in a row of reduction in GDP. And this is a tough one because part of the Fed's mandate is to control runaway inflation. And inflation is remaining high, as you said at the beginning, 8-9% year over year. And the Fed can't let that get worse. They'd really love to see inflation come down to 2 or 3%. And they're willing to sacrifice economic growth in order to bring inflation down. They believe the markets can bear it. Like we said a few minutes ago, unemployment is very low. And the Fed is basically saying, if the economy slows down a bit, some layoffs happen, some companies have to shutter their windows, that's basically worth the sacrifice to keep inflation low. And that's a really tough trade-off and a hard pill to swallow, but that's the way they're looking at it.
Okay. Michael Mezzatesta, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hoping for better economic news from you.
You too.
Thank you very much.